Johnson. Now, this week, the Scottish Health Secretary, Jeane Freeman, stepped up her personal security after a man was arrested and charged with sending out threatening messages. And last year, a number of MPs, many of them women, decided not to stand again in the general election, citing the abuse they had received as the main reason. So could this hostile environment be turning a younger generation of would-be politicians away from party politics? Darren McCullens reports.
The abuse of politicians has been a hot topic in recent years, as political tensions have come to the boil.
Lots of people don't like your daddy, you know that.
But how might this shape the politics of the future? We'll hear from these former youth politicians a little later.
Kes Dugdale, Director of the John Swift Centre at the University of Glasgow.
This former Scottish Labour leader, who now works to encourage positive and representative politics, says talent will go elsewhere if the febrile environment continues, and that will be damaging for the Parliament.
There's no doubt in my mind that this is putting people off standing for elected office. The evidence says that, my experience says that. And the reality is young people can make impact in different ways now. They can do it through direct action, things like Extinction Rebellion. They can take part in citizens' assemblies. So reasons to stand for elected office seem less now than they used to be. But we have to defend the idea of young people seeing Parliament, seeing standing for being an MSP or an MP is a really meaningful, brilliant way to make the world a better place.
Conservative MSP Annie Wells believes that abuse is received across the political spectrum and something needs to change.
It's the personal attacks and it's the things that your family see, your partner sees, your staff see. So I think I've sort of been there and came out the other side or coming out the other side. But I can see how it would put people off actually coming into the world of politics. And we do need to look at the next generation coming through. Is this going to put them off? And what do we do to stop that?
What kind of abuse have you suffered since you entered here?
Well, I've had to get the police involved a couple of times. I've had a threat made against me, against myself personally. I've had my office attacked. I've had the fire brigade had to come and take panels off the side because it was trying to get set on fire. I've had Tory scum written on the outside.
Unfortunately, she is not alone. Last year, Clydesdale MSP Aileen Campbell's office was attacked, while her party colleague Joanna Cherry received what police deemed to be a credible death threat. The Liberal Democrats' Christine Jordan reported an answer phone message containing threats of rapes and beatings, and former Labour MP Danielle Rowley received a letter which imagined her being attacked with acid. It's cases like these that are causing concern, and with the Scottish Parliament elections coming up next year, will young people be reluctant to put their names on the ballot? I spoke to some former members of the Scottish Youth Parliament to hear their plans.
So it's hard enough to be a woman in politics, sure, but as a disabled woman and as a queer woman, it's near enough impossible to get your voice heard and to be taken seriously. And then I'm also a young person, so of course that's all just thrown out the window.
For years, Chloe dreamt of standing to be an MSP, but having had a taste of the firing line as a youth politician, she has changed her mind.
I felt ready to take that step, but now I would just work with a charity instead, sort of be an activist, but from a third-party perspective, because then it's like you're not on the firing line. It's a shame to see such a passionate generation of voters and of young people who are clearly, more fired up than ever. You've seen it with the climate strikes, who are all turning to me and saying that they don't think they'd ever stand for election.
That's just such a grand shame, isn't it?
Yeah, it's clear that they would have something new to bring to the Scottish Parliament, and yet we might not ever see them there.
Suki has also decided that politics in this environment isn't for her.
It's a very toxic environment, I think, and I know that coming from a youth politics angle of that was toxic enough for me, so going on to sort of real world politics would be, I think, quite an uncomfortable level. I do get thoughts of wanting to take action and actually represent my community and people who are affected by issues directly in those communities in politics, but I also recognise that there are a lot of barriers. You've seen all the abuse that female MPs get alone just by being female, and I wouldn't be so naive to say that adding a sort of racial aspect onto that wouldn't even make that worse.
Ryan spent much of his childhood in care. Eager to make a positive impact, he says he would still consider standing to be an MSP, even as an independent, but he is mindful that he isn't sure how he would react if he was to face constant hostility.
I think for me it wouldn't put me off because I know that there's so much gain from politics, but there's so much things that you can do to influence people's lives to make them be better. There will be days where I'll know it will be tough, and I know it will be difficult. They're entitled to their own view as well, and it gets to the point where if that viewpoint does become abusive and does become toxic, it's about how then I react.
Politics only has a future if young people are drawn to it. With an election next year, we'll find out exactly how off-putting the past few years of confrontational politics have proved.
That was Darren McCullens reporting there. Well, joining me, the Speaker of the Holyrood Magazine's Jenny Davidson and the Scottish Daily Mail's Rachel Watson. Jenny, just on that